All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the group chat. We've got another fantastic episode with some great topics to discuss. As always, we're here, part of the two-way family, where our mantra is peace, love, and understanding. My name is Robby Soave. I'm the resident libertarian of this panel. I'm also joined, as usual, by Dan Turrentine, a moderate Democrat, Nina Turner, who's a progressive Democrat, and filling in for Emma Jo Morris this week is my friend Amber Duke, a conservative who you know from her work at the Daily Caller. She also joins me or fills in for me sometimes on Rising and joins with me on Free Media. So there's no shortage of ways to see Amber and I in conversation. We're very glad to expand that conversation to other people today, including our community members, who we are so grateful to be participating here. When you have a question or a comment you want to make, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you. We'd love to hear from you on all these topics. We're going to try to hit a couple different things today. Our last few episodes have really stayed laser focused on one subject. So the first thing we're talking about, another unfortunately tragic subject, a shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas. Now, one person has been killed, two others critically injured, and the shooter who killed himself is dead as well. The people killed and injured in this were detainees, not law enforcement. The shooter fired somewhat blindly into a van and happened to strike detainees. You have a lot of people weighing in on this on the national scale as anti-ICE. That message, anti-ICE, was found on one of the shell casings. Kash Patel, the FBI director, has said that accumulated evidence at this point indicates a high degree of pre-attack planning. That he had left a message that said, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof, et cetera. So there's been a lot of national reaction. Let's play Vice President J.D. Vance reacting to it, and then I'll get some reaction from my fellow panelists.
Because here's what happens. Because here's what happens when Democrats, like Gavin Newsom did, say that these people are part of an authoritarian government. When the left-wing media lies about what they're doing, when they lie about who they're arresting, when they lie about the actual job of law enforcement, what they're doing is encouraging crazy people to go and commit violence. You don't have to agree with my immigration policies. You don't have to agree with Donald Trump's immigration policies. But if your political rhetoric encourages violence against our law enforcement, you can go straight to hell, and you have no place in the political conversation of the United States of America.
So, Amber, as our guest, I'll come to you first. Now, I think with the obvious caveat that it's still, very early and still investigating possible motivations for the shooter. And I did see a report from Ken Klippenstein where he interviewed some friends of this Joshua John, the presumed shooter, where they suggested that they were gobsmacked, that they never thought he was even political at all. Some conflicting information, but and it does an anti-ICE message on the bullet casing speak for itself. With the assassination of Charlie Kirk, where is the right in terms of their concern about they're saying this is left-wing violence and plausibly due to left-wing rhetoric?
Yeah, well, I think the concern is very high. In addition to those two attacks that you mentioned, there were previous attacks on ICE facilities and agents, including a planned ambush at the McAllen, Texas facility. We had a shooter who allegedly yelled "Free Palestine" before opening fire at a country club in New Hampshire, an attempted bombing of a Fox News local affiliate van, and then someone shooting up an ABC local affiliate because they were apparently angry that Jimmy Kimmel had been pulled off the air, and they left behind a list saying that they were going after the Trump administration as well. So just within the past month, there's been a lot of high-profile incidences of left-wing politically motivated violence. And frankly, the right is really grappling with how to respond to it and trying to prevent the worst impulses from basically veering into a place where there's a free speech crackdown, but also trying to use proper channels to actually address the problem. So that's why you see the Trump administration looking into potential domestic terror networks. And a lot of people pushing back on AG Pam Bondi just a couple of weeks ago for using the phrase hate speech and saying that she wanted to go after hate speech, because that's been a long time sort of thorn in the side of the right in terms of silencing speech.
Yeah. Nina, the connection between rhetoric and violence is a major area of interest for me. I'm usually someone pushing back, or have been in the past, when it's been asserted by liberal commentators that, oh, there's too, all this, the right-wing rhetoric, and that's causing right-wing violence. I'm now seeing somewhat of an embrace of that idea going the opposite way, with some caveats. I'm glad there's been pushback on the idea that we should criminalize hate speech, but there's certainly this going to be a Republican-led effort, to defund left-wing groups, et cetera. As I think a self-described member of the left, how do you feel about that? And what do you say to conservatives who are saying, oh, this is the fault of left-wing organizing, in addition to just left-wing rhetoric?
Well, Robbie, basically, this is American on American violence, just plain stop. And part of the problem is that you have people with these special titles trying to politicize this, to say, oh, it's that side, it's the other side. No, this is a problem, and it is increasing in the United States. It's not new to the United States, but certainly it's increasing in the United States. So I just have a problem with some of my sisters and brothers and family and friends on the right now flipping the script. They were saying these types of things about people on the left trying to do away with free speech. And now we have the president of the United States that is just blatantly, and some members of his cabinet, trying to find ways to erode the First Amendment. Now, I remember the president of the United States of America saying something like stand back and stand by. Was that his? And, a lot of people on the left tried to claim that he was trying to tell his people to gear up, get ready, pack, load up your arms and get ready. Now, I don't know if the president meant that or not, but somebody could have took that as, let me arm myself and I'm going to stand back and stand by. J.D. Vance, the current vice president, alluded that President Trump was a type of Hitler, had Hitler-like tendencies before he became the president of the United States of America. So it's really rich for me to hear him make these types of assertions. He just put out a tweet earlier that said that Democrats want to give health care to illegal immigrants, when in fact we know the cuts to Medicaid, the trillions of dollars of cuts that were then given to the ruling class in this country, hurt most Americans, and not just Americans who may be receiving direct benefit, but if you are an American and you might have a parent or a grandparent in a nursing home, those nursing homes receive Medicaid benefits. So, Robbie, it's just hysterical to me that they would do this. I remember when Top Store in Buffalo, in the predominantly black area, white supremacists came in there and gunned those people down. I didn't hear all this type of rhetoric from President Trump. Maybe I missed it.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed it. Or when Mother Emanuel Church was shot up by white supremacists, I didn't hear it. So the bottom line is that we as Americans who don't want to see this got to mount up, no matter who we would be politically affiliated with.
We don't want to see it.
Yeah, we don't want to see it at all. And my son, Robbie, is in law enforcement, okay? So not only do I worry about him just regularly, now I got to extra worry about him, because this I do understand. When people are bold enough to go after law enforcement, even if you don't like, what's popping off.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. So Dan, I see and agree with Nina's point on, on one level, it can't be fair to say that, oh, people called, Trump a fascist, so then if you ever did that, then someone who commits violence, it's your fault. That seems like a tactic to suppress people, saying a legitimate political or expressing a First Amendment protected political idea. On the other hand, I am seeing, liberal, not even necessarily left people, but just liberal people on social media. Yashar Ali expressed this, others, that just like apoplexy that this could be yet an additional person after 2 weeks who just committed violence for a tangibly liberal or progressive associated reason, that he didn't like ICE, which fits in with Democratic rhetoric. The guy didn't like Charlie Kirk from a direction that left-wing people didn't like him. There's like a failure to recognize or accept that as reality. Like I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I don't like it's a false flag. Like it's a right-wing person who wrote anti-ICE to trick you. Like people on the Democratic side are having to reckon with the fact that there might be their side committing violence. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just these are crazy times. I mean, you said it to some parts of the Democratic Party, just like when you heard that the economic statistics were supposedly fake news. There is a real conversation on the left that those bullet casings are fake, that there's no way that that the person really wrote this, which is sad, right? I mean, it's gotten to the point now where like there are tribal corners whenever an accident happens, or not an accident, but an act where you're like, wait a sec, those facts can't be true. I'm going to assume that the facts are true. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I do think when it comes to ICE, and I've said this for 6, 9 months, the way the party talks about it, I think has crossed a line. I think you have had elected officials kind of talking about harassing and getting in the way, this whole movement of taking your masks off. Like, we don't ask FBI agents doing drug raids to take their masks off. We understand why they have masks on. They do a dangerous job. We don't want people going home and being harassed and potentially targeted because I see Bob's face and Bob's an ICE agent and I don't like what Bob is doing. It certainly does sound like this is an instance of someone who just is really angry about ICE. And I do, I think all law enforcement, whether Nina's son, the police in New York City, anywhere, need to be treated with respect. They have a very hard job. They are doing their job. ICE agents are being directed by the federal government. We had an election. This was a huge part of the election, this topic. And so this to me is rather horrifying. And I think Amber ran through previous incidents of people targeting ICE agents, ICE facilities. Go back to California, people trying to get in the way of ICE, stop them from what they're doing. I don't like this part of the Democratic Party right now. And I wish our leaders would say, no. You can be vehemently against the immigration policy, but you do not screw around with law enforcement.
Yeah, I can understand. I certainly keeping, the coverings that let you keep your identity secret is because so that you don't get harassed or your family harassed or doxxed or something like that. I think law enforcement should have to identify themselves as law enforcement as they go about law enforcement actions, because people could think they're being kidnapped or people have who've reacted to long door raids in the middle of the night thinking they're being attacked. That
Absolutely.
is, I want them saying ICE
Absolutely.
or FBI or police or whatever it is.
Absolutely, Robby. And there have been incidences. And Michael, thank you for saying, bless you, I sneezed. Thank you so much. There have been recent incidences of men primarily. If there's some women involved, they too are wrong. Buying ICE, because you can buy this stuff on Amazon, who've been accosted and not knowing who these people really, really are, and bad things have happened to them. So, Robby, you are absolutely right. Unless they're undercover, which we get that's a whole different assignment, you should have to identify who you are in the United States of America.
Yeah. If the cops come up to me and where I live in DC and say, "Hey, we need your car for a secret mission," you better be showing me some ID after that. I'm just going to expect I'm being carjacked. Amber, something I wanted to ask you about. As the effort is underway, and a lot of Republican leaders have talked about the need to defund or investigate left-wing groups. It's still, as we're investigating how this shooter got radicalized, if it's a radicalization process, as the Charlie Kirk shooter, what motivated them. This person in particular is clearly a video game player, is like a very online person. There was some evidence that maybe the Charlie Kirk shooter is also a very online person. Seeking, maybe it's a seeking notoriety thing. I'm very worried about that in terms of in terms of mass shooters who leave manifestos and clearly enjoy the idea of the attention they're going to get after they're dead and gone and the thing is committed. That is different than just prosecuting the groups, or that if they're radicalized on campus or something, it would be easier. This is much less straightforward, and I'm not sure. It's not even necessarily ideological. I'm not sure how we grapple with that or what the solution is.
Yeah, it's a great point. And one of the things that I think is the sort of undercurrent between political violence and school shootings and mass shootings is that there tends to be online radicalization. There's a copycat element involved, and then obviously a mental health element involved. And those three things seem to be rather consistent, regardless if the attacks are ideologically motivated or primarily for attention-seeking methods. And so one of the complicating factors of the Trump administration's decision to investigate funding streams for groups like Antifa is that it appears that the Charlie Kirk assassin and this ICE shooter were lone wolves. They really weren't involved in broader political organizations. They weren't in massive group chats where they were planning something like you would typically see with Antifa before they show up for a riot.
Well, and that's the thing that I think is so frustrating to so many Democrats here is what you're seeing, Rahm Emanuel famously said, let no crisis go to waste. And this idea that there is an organized democratic effort to assassinate people, to shoot people, perhaps we will see evidence of this. But I think to Amber's point, I think what's enraging to a lot of Democrats is there does not appear to be any evidence of this, and yet the Republican Party talks about like the Democratic Party and Democrats supporting this as if there's this like cabal communicating on WhatsApp of doing these efforts. And I think that's where Democrats are like, are you serious? You're just trying to take advantage of this to crush your political opposition. Maybe they're not, but it sure does feel to some Democrats like that's what's trying to happen.
I agree with Dan. And they don't have the same outrage, colleagues, when it comes to these school shootings. If we care about violence, just whether it's political violence, whether somebody went stark raving mad at shooting up schools, shooting up malls, shooting up churches, shooting up grocery stores, to me, that's the place where we should rest. That we don't want this to happen in the United States of America. And how can the collective we come together and be unified in how to deal with these types of things as a nation, instead of, again, those with the heaviest titles using it to the point that Dan just made.
My worry is that if it is becoming more prevalent, what's making it more prevalent is the attention shown. Yes, the political violence, that the mass shooter, that the whatever have in common is that desire to be seen and heard. They have some kind of social alienation, and the attention they're going to get is a motivating factor. And that is the most terrifying prospect of all, really, because it's not one that has an obvious solution, because we can't just compel news organizations or independent news, the whole media, from not talking about these things. Maybe it is on us to cover these things in a different way, but people want to know. The American people want to know who the person is and why they did it. And it feels irresponsible not to try to answer those questions, but maybe it is irresponsible to contribute to the moment in the sun you get when you do something like this.
So Dan, just a quick question before we go to our community members. Do you think the urge to want to know, though, is being amped up by the political players? In other words, how would we really want, people want to know certain things.
Answers, we're a curious species. Maybe we'd be better if we just said, okay, we're not going to learn this person's name, another lunatic, move on. But I don't know that you almost have to retrain the human brain to go in that way.
I feel like we'd have a massive national uprising if that were the case, given how many conspiracy theories.
For you. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I mean, people think Israel killed Charlie and that the ICE shooter was like right wing. I mean, the amount of conspiracy theories floating around about so many of these incidents is people aren't satisfied, granted, even if you do release the name. But if you don't, my God.
Yeah. Well, and think about what Amber, think about the fact we still don't know why the first attempted assassination on Trump, what was the motive? It's never been said.
Or the Las Vegas shooting.
Right. And that to me is still unbelievable. And I think one of the sad things is when these events happen, it's just you knee jerk, it had to be X, right? It had to be the left. It had to be the right, before we even have any facts about stuff.
Because, Dan, don't you think it's because of the way primarily that elected officials, not exclusively, amp people up in this way? I guess we're asking the question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's one thing to be curious, but it's another thing to already reconcile in your mind. It's that side. They did it. Yeah. and to me, that's really what this is
Or to do the
coming.
reverse.
But I will say,
thank
though,
God
that on,
it's not my side. It was this.
Yeah, well,
it was an
that's-
Islamic
and-
shooter. It was a trans shooter.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
Antifa. It was right wing. It's someone who watched Tucker Carlson. It's someone who watched Joy Reid.
Yeah.
It's someone who watched, like, the relief that I don't have to wreck it, which is crazy because no one should be responsible for the violent actions of another person.
That's
I
right.
will say,
Unless
though,
you
Robbie,
actually induce them to do it.
That's
the one
right.
place I do kind of, it does make me cringe. I do, and I'll come back to this. The way the Democratic Party talks about ICE does make me cringe. I mean, just some of and it's not just one or two people, I think is just over the top. Like, it is treating the ICE like the Gestapo, which is not what they are. I mean, they are doing their job to enforce immigration law. You can not like the immigration law. You can want to elect officials who will go in a different direction. But this, like, it's them. Like, they're evil. I don't like that. And I don't think it helps.
One other thing I wanted to bring up just really quickly for the Dems on the panel, because I'm curious your reaction, is that there have been these polls coming out recently that suggest that the left is far more comfortable with political violence and more likely to say that it's justified than comparative right-leaning people in the polls. And then we also see a not insignificant percent of Democrats or self-identified liberals saying that they think the world would be a better place if, say, Charlie Kirk were gone or Donald Trump were dead. What do you think about that difference? What do you think drives that? I mean, my personal theory is that there is a sort of illiberal faction of the left that started in perhaps the 2010s where speech that they didn't like was deemed violent. But I would love to hear what you all think about that.
I mean, for me, I've seen polling that says that those who identify more on the right are even more violent. So we can pick our polls. The bottom line is that I don't believe that anybody should be wishing death on anybody. I mean, this should be, unless somebody did something to you really personal, and I don't have to enumerate those things, those things that are just vile to humanity. Why would you be doing that? Why would you have political figures that continue to stoke that? I still believe, I'm with Robbie on individuals should be critiqued for their individual behavior, and people though are amped up, and this is my team mentality. I believe it has really led to all this. I didn't, Amber, agree with cancel culture. You cancel the one person you want to be you want canceled. The next time they coming for somebody you like that you don't want to be canceled. You can't escape that because at one point, it's coming for you. So I never did support that. And I want to say to you, I mean, Emma Jo knows this, but I'm in that party. I'm not of it. And I rail against it all the time.
I respect that greatly.
Neoliberals do not like me, Amber Duke. I want you to know that.
I know.
That is
and
the
I respect
truth.
you
We
a
know
lot
that.
for it.
I get more love from
All right,
Republicans
we
than
gotta
I do
get to
from
a
Democrats.
we got to get to a community member. I've told Dan has been waiting the longest.
Yes.
You can unmute yourself and
Hello,
hello, my
Dan.
friend. Tell us what's on your mind.
Hey guys,
Hi.
I just had a question. Hello, how are you?
Good.
So with everything that happened with Kimmel this weekend, the outrage for what people are upset about what he said, I think just yesterday I heard Jesse Waters reference bombing the UN, and that got no attention. So I'm just wondering, what is, like, why is that? Why does something, is it because that Fox is not holding him accountable for something that he said? Or I'm very curious into why, it seems that the one side of the aisle gets all the attention on things that they say. Trump gets to say whatever he wants, and it's just Trump. So I don't know. I love your thoughts on that.
Ooh, that's great, Dan.
Yeah, I think you might agree with that one. You want to take that?
Dan, that is beautiful. Beautiful. 2 words for it: selective outrage.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it is true that. Well, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I think the Jimmy Kimmel thing is, like, so fascinating because I think I have been surprised at, like, just Democrats' elation that he was brought back on. This sense that, like, they stood up, they pushed back, and they won for really the first time in the Trump administration with this, kind of going after the media, universities, law firms, where the party felt so helpless. And I think part of what Kimmel also has Democrats elated is that Kimmel kind of didn't apologize. And some of this is just kind of this, like, imitation of Trump, who never apologizes for stuff. and the sense within the party that like we need to copy what he's doing. And I find it fascinating. I mean, just Democrats, whether it's elected officials kind of, high-fiving on social media, if you look at like Blue Sky and other places, this sense of like, we won. And I've been taken aback. I'm like, wow, people really felt invested in Jimmy Kimmel coming back on. And I think to Dan's point about kind of what people say on cable television, I've said this before, if saying things that are incendiary or not true is a standard on cable, all cable channels would be gone. They all would be guilty.
Yeah,
I mean, didn't we have a Fox? I'm sorry, Amber. Didn't we just have a Fox person who said, kill homeless people, and he got away with just
he did apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you know
Rob,
what? I
he
think a lot
apologized,
of,
but nobody came for his job.
no, I mean, granted, broadcast and cable are slightly different because there is the government
I know.
oversight aspect.
Yep.
But I mean, I actually do think that if Jimmy Kimmel had offered a sincere apology and not like well, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings, I actually think a lot of people on the right would have been satisfied with that. But it was the report that he apparently went to the ABC executives and said he was going to clarify his statement but not apologize, and that's sort of why they ultimately took him off the air for a period of time. And then when he did come back, he gave this sort of like tearful BS about how he was sorry, how people took it. I think that just added salt to the wound.
I also,
Well, and I think,
I disagree with the, ideologically, I disagree with the FCC's decision to, weigh in on this at all. I also think the fact that they did do that was tactically not wise because it has made this more of a muddled issue and has allowed people of a liberal or even moderate persuasion to say, well, this wasn't a market decision. This is because the FCC made a kind of threatening remark about it. Where if they
he did muddy the waters, yeah.
You could have just said, well, the markets are reacting. These large broadcasting companies have decided their viewers are really mad at Kimmel over this, so that it's their decision, which is why people like even Ted Cruz are not happy about it.
But I think what's so fascinating is like you had the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, all pushing back. And what you saw on social media with a lot of Democrats was Trump would not have apologized. So Jimmy should not apologize either. And you're like, oh my gosh, like it is this, eye for an eye, that, never give in mentality that is beginning to seize within parts of the Democratic Party. And to Amber's point, like it's ironic that Republicans are like, oh, just say you're sorry, when Democrats pull their hair out saying, why won't Trump ever say, I'm sorry, I screwed up, right? And it's the times we're in.
Do we have another community member to come up? Production, should we bring somebody up? I can't see who's next.
We got Sharon, we got Tom.
There we go. We got somebody. Introduce yourself and let us know what's on your mind.
You're more than somebody. Tell us who you are.
I'm Sue. I'm from Colorado. I've been a two-way since the absolute beginning. I got an email from Audra saying, come on, Mark has this new program. So
thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Very thankful for your loyal support.
I love all the platforms, and I'm on the Dan quad for today. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
But listening to the conversation, I agree so much that when we have these shootings and people are saying it's the left, it's the right, I really think that in general, everybody is missing the point. There's a through line through a lot of these shooters. They are young, mostly white males. There's something going on. Lots of people discuss this. Young men in this country are in crisis. And I think we, as a country, need to focus more on what's going on with that. How are they getting radicalized? Why are they getting radicalized? Is it because, during COVID, everything shut down and they were always online and they never got offline, and now the algorithms are like pushing them in one direction or the other? Who knows? But I think if we really want to solve this as an average American who really gets sick of all of the sniping and the hyper partisanship we see in this country, I mean, to me, it's just absolutely disgusting. I think we are really doing a disservice to the country in general when we are pointing fingers at everybody else and saying, no, it's you, before we really know what's going on. And then even after we do, I mean, we're all Americans. We have to learn how to cooperate with each other. We have to learn how to compromise. That's not where we are right now. We've gone so far away from that. And again, I just think the core of this problem is to get to why is this happening? And I really think that a lot of the young people are just in crisis, especially young men. That's my thought.
Young men clearly very in crisis, and that, you know, that goes across racial groups. There are certainly a lot of young white males who've committed violence, but you know, white people are most of the population, so it's not like a statistical
I'm not saying
anomaly. But you're right that it's all males. Males commit far, you know, many factors more violence than women, and there is a sense that I think is correct, that a lot of young men are lacking some kind of meaning in their lives, and we're trying to understand why that might be the case. And it's almost easier to be like, well, it's political. You're being radicalized by this, or you're being radicalized by this, when it's right. When is it's a broader alienation, or like a collapse of socialization and friendship? Is it, you know, some people say, oh, it's all these violent video games they play, but I actually know lots of young dudes who have friends from playing like violent video games, and that is their socialization, and they'd be much more miserable loners if they weren't engaged in that kind of activity. So then that correlation becomes not clear at all. Anybody have
Yeah, I mean, look, we have
I think it's this.
take a crack at it.
I think it's this.
You think it's
a spiritual issue.
I think it's lack of. I mean, decline of organized religion being a factor in people's lives, particularly young people's lives, could certainly be.
And I think politics replaces it in a lot of cases, because that's where they find purpose and meaning.
Yeah, I mean, we have 4 boys, 3 of whom are teenagers. They are all, the other one, for all intents and purposes, is a teenager because he spends so much time with his brothers. I mean, it is concerning that kids spend so much time on their phones. They all 4 of our kids like to game. You go into these chat rooms that accompany the gaming, and yeah, 90%, 95 are, you know, kind of normal people, let's say. But there are, every one of them has a story of a crazy person who has either started communicating, you know, via the written word in these group chats, or kind of verbally, who invite you to other places. And I think there's a lot of kids whose parents aren't paying attention who they're talking to, where they spend alone time with these phones and they go into rabbit holes. You add kind of the mental health issues and everything else. It is scary. And I think it's fascinating, because one of the things that kind of to me was so appalling. Shootings.
Oh, did Dan's mic go out?
I lost Dan. Dan, we can't hear you at the moment.
Oh, it was just me.
Oh, no, now I can hear you.
You're back.
You're back.
Uh-oh.
We lost rewind 30 seconds.
Well, I was just saying that one of the things that's remarkable is that the tech companies have escaped any real discussion. And at one point, J.D. Vance made the comment that the tech companies are all Democrats and are part of their being responsible. And I was like, oh my God, they literally are having dinner on the patio in the Rose Garden like every other week. Trump loves having all the tech CEOs, but yet tech has kind of escaped any conversation about how influential they are. Both parties seem to be fairly outraged at what's happening on these platforms with kids, but nobody wants to move on it.
Yeah, I have very mixed views on that subject, because while I recognize certainly the harms that can and have been shown from just like being so addicted to doom scrolling social media, particularly doom scrolling these like very quick videos of things you've already seen, and just like losing like an hour and a half of time that you
it's way more than an hour and a half for some of these kids.
That you could have spent, you know, like doing something more enriching with your free. Like you could have, like watching a movie would have been a better use of your time. Engaging with some creative process you haven't seen before. At the same time, I mean, I have used social media to meet people all over the world. Like I'm not a heavy gamer by any stretch of the imagination, but I play games online. I used to do more of it when I was younger. I met people who live all over the world in like this chat room style game thing I played that was like deeply enriching to my life. I've had friends come visit me in DC that I've met from playing this game. I've like visited in other parts of the country that was cool and healthy for me. And you hear about it when it goes wrong. You hear about it when a kid is radicalized or depressed or kills himself because of some kind of social media addiction. You do hear about, the however many cases that social media was used responsibly to network with peer groups. I don't know.
I've seen some research. Go ahead,
way.
Nina.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. There's a strain of, I'm just amen, and most of what I'm hearing from my colleagues, I want to narrow in on something. Well, first of all, thank you, Sue, for bringing that up. But what Amber said, there is a lack of spirituality. I won't necessarily say major religion as much as it's the sense of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule, the sense of community. And I am interested to see what social scientists who study this kind of thing have to say when they compare today's younger people to the 20th century, or to, decades gone by where it was not this much access to social media. Any of these pillars can become, it's a good, but it also can become bad if it's overdone and if people don't have other areas in their life where they can find fulfillment. I saw in some of the chat things that came up, the sense of despair. I think Michael said sense of despair, the rise of nihilism. I don't know if there's more than one Michael here, but Michael, that caught my eye. And then there was a lady, I think, who talked about, kind of like the lack of, she didn't put it this way, but, feminine energy. So this all comes back to balance is basically where I think it's happening. And if it takes a village. There's an African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. If we can see our communities as villages and that we all have some type of responsibility to help our sisters and brothers and our family and friends, because if someone is, I won't necessarily say not raised right, because parents can only control so much, but if we don't reach out and have a helping hand, as we can see by the types of violences that are reflective in our culture today, it does impact all of us one way or another.
Yeah, I'm not a video game hater by any means. I grew up playing video games, but when I see the photo of the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin sitting in front of a computer at age 10 and his mom says, oh, well, he doesn't have to talk to us anymore, that truly breaks my heart. Yeah, and I'm a huge proponent of some of the restrictions that Senator Hawley has proposed in terms of infinite scroll and content moderation for young people. Although I also don't want to go into the Europe Internet Safety Act level of that. So it's finding balance is definitely the right thing, as Nina said. One of the other points I wanted to bring up, because this I think came out today when we're talking about female companionship and young people dating. There's this increasing divide between young men becoming more conservative and young women becoming more liberal. Yeah. And this new study, I'm not sure who it's from, let me find out, but basically it found that young liberal women are far less likely to date someone across the political spectrum than the other way around. And so not only is it people getting sucked into social media and those social ties disintegrating, but we also have this massive political gap where people feel like their values are so out of alignment that they won't even go on dates with each other.
At a time where, as you said, your political affiliation has gained salience and importance.
Exactly.
It used to be that being a Republican or being a Democrat was kind of like being part of a club where you had very liberal Republicans and you had very conservative Democrats. But we've now neatly ideologically sorted where now conservative people are part of the Republican Party and liberal people are part of the Democratic Party. And that identity actually matters a lot to you. It's reversed the question of, would you be comfortable having your kid marry someone who's part of a different race? That used to be way more people would say no with that than comfortable marrying someone of a different political party. Now that number has, in a good way, totally collapsed. But the number of people who'd be uncomfortable having a family member of the different political party has gone through the roof. These identities have become more important as boys and girls, men and women are sorting increasingly into different tribes, which is going to make which is making dating clearly a lot harder for young people, as we've heard anecdotally and seen statistically. Let's get another community member, Andrew. Step on up and unmute yourself, and thanks for weighing in. Let us know what you're thinking.
Oh no, I appreciate it. I wasn't expecting to be called, and I got called on in the morning meeting.
Yeah.
and so like
Welcome back.
Thank you. I hope I didn't ramble on so like too much. It was kind of
This is your big
no.
moment. Your
No,
big
not at
moment
all.
right now.
Not at
No
all.
pressure.
Oh no, but I think as I mentioned, so like in the morning meetings, so like my political affiliation has sort of like moved from left to right, so like, but in the grand scheme of things, I am very much an independent. I agree with both sides on a lot of different things. I have that kind of both the European side of things where I grew up, but also my mom's side of things of like growing up here in the US and being here in the US for 12 years. I love sort of like being sort of like a part of the community here. So like here in America with my wife and two kids. So it's I feel like right now there's a lot of turmoil. I feel like what everybody's been saying, so like unpacking, so like I guess for young men, but I think young people in general, and I think bringing COVID up is definitely something that needs to be considered. That was a really tumultuous time in the world, especially for young people. Luckily, my youngest son, so he was only 18 months, 2 years old, so he didn't really get that sort of like affected. But I guess
So he only had one iPad, is what you're telling us at that age?
Oh my, that's yeah. Like the tablets are like I try and steer clear of technology as much as I can. I don't have social media, so the only social media I have is Substack because I subscribe to the Free Press. But it's kind of but even there, I can see just the hatred and the vitriol from some people from the left and the right, and I absolutely hate that. I just feel like that's why I love this kind of platform. I love the way that sort of like everybody talks here. I love it. Mark, I love Sean, so like, and I feel like just coming together, even though you have your differences, we can all find some common ground. And that's why I can't understand why the mainstream media continues to perpetuate sort of like just the biases from both sides. Why can't there just be constructive dialogue like we have sort of like on these platforms?
Yeah.
And I guess sort of like being in the media more than I, so like why can't there be sort of like some common ground rather than just sort of like
I think it's low hanging fruit, honestly, for more media companies to do what Two-Way does, what Rising does. I said, not that I'm plugging it, but Amber and I both participate in it, where you have people of different
Shameless plug.
different political sides actually debate and discuss. Has tremendous value, and very few. Well, I know why major media organizations haven't figured out that that's low hanging fruit is because they're run by people who are actually not that smart and have not updated their
or very ideological.
Right, or they're very ideological.
I think Amber's got it more. Yeah,
maybe it's
I mean, look,
malice and competence. Sometimes I go incompetence, but
it's both for the media, I think.
I mean, I grew up listening to sports talk radio, Don Imus, like, Howard Stern growing up outside New York City. What do they all have in common? You were successful if you had kind of outrageous, bold, they used to call them shock jocks because they shocked you. I mean, they literally would do and say things that made you kind of like sit up in your chair and go, oh my God, or laugh out loud. I think with the proliferation of media, what you're seeing is the more outrageous you are, the more controversial, the Stephen A. Smiths, as an example, you get attention. People want you. People want to hear what you have to say. And so I think there is an incentive to not only be tribal, but to be shocking, and that at some point people will say, I want down the middle. I want a cooler temperature. I want to hear both sides. And the free market will reward somebody, hopefully two-way, that provides that to people.
I think there's two axes. There's temperament, and then there's, how strong your views actually are. You don't necessarily need to be moderate in both ways. I have pretty strongly held views on, I guess, everything, but because I'm a libertarian, I come down in the middle because I have some strongly held views that align with Nina and some strongly held views that align with Amber. but I think I'm temperamentally pretty moderate. And Dan, you're very temperamentally moderate. People, maybe they get tired of just being screamed at, although platforms that allow people to just scream at each other also occasionally do well. So I'm not sure. Let's take one more community member and then move on to our next topic. Jen, do you want to unmute yourself and weigh in? Hey, Jen, thanks for being with us.
There we go. Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
A while back, I heard a social scientist on, I think it was probably a Jordan Peterson podcast, and he was talking, his specialty is this crisis among young men. And one of the things he brought up, and I have given a lot of thought to this, and I agree, is we need to stop teaching young men that they're toxic just because they're male. You know, ironically, these bad actors, these few who are the only ones we should be blaming for anything, are toxic, you know, but they're in an environment that has become very, very toxic. But I think, you know, we need to be uplifting all of our young people to let them know their destiny is not predetermined by how they were born, either through their skin or their sex, whatever, that they have a path before them, that they have a lot they can do about that. You know, they're not stuck in a mold that means that they're toxic or means that they're oppressed or whatever. I think we just have to be very careful about that kind of teaching in their upbringing, because that does lead to nihilism. You know, if you're going to be defined by this no matter what you do, why try to overcome?
Yeah, if you feel like you can't change your circumstances because of some kind of precondition,
Yeah,
gender-based or racial-based or
right,
or
absolutely.
anything else, right? You become nihilistic. You become depressed. I think that's I think that's definitely true, and I think there's a recognition among political leaders broadly that it's been a wrong strategy to make young men feel demonized. I think the Democratic Party feels that way. Not that it was a deliberate strategy on their part, but that they've become associated with that sort of brand. If anybody, do any of you guys want to jump in on that one? If not, we can go right to our final topic.
I mean, I totally agree. It's something we have talked to our own four boys about, and I think you have heard Democrats saying, I think the focus on trying to maximize female turnout, trying to maximize the gender gap with women has turned off men, and you add the kind of social component about what the caller just talked about, and it's a bad combination.
I'd also add that we've seen really the destruction of male-only spaces in America. I mean, the Boy Scouts are now, girls can join. You don't get like a boys-only camping trip anymore. Even on the university level, there were women who sued for inclusion in fraternities, which of course, historically male-only. And I think it's difficult for men, and I hear this from my husband and other close male friends, that it's really hard for them to find a space now where they're just allowed to be guys and they don't have like the watchful eye of a henpecker kind of like policing everything they say.
I don't have that problem, but that's a lifestyle adjustment most are probably unwilling to make. Let's move to our next topic. Kamala Harris is on a book tour / revenge tour and met with some protesters, actually. Can we play element 9 of Kamala Harris meeting an unfavorable audience? Let's put that up there.
How and why you are saying what you are saying now and how I felt about it. You're not letting me talk. You know what? I respect your right to speak. You're not letting me speak. the temperature down, unlike the current president of the United States.
All right, so to be clear, that was protesters who are against how the Biden administration handled the Israel-Gaza issue, and Kamala Harris's failure, in their view, to distance herself from what Biden was doing at all. Nina, you know I'm going to come to you on this. Is this well deserved on her part? For I think in her mind, she thinks that she did say what Biden was doing and said all along that she didn't agree with it and would have done something different. I think in her head, she thinks that. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think she actually did that at all. But what's your?
Yeah, absolutely. She wasn't forceful enough about it, especially when she was running. She should have separated herself from the president, for President Biden. But she said that she didn't necessarily think. I'm paraphrasing her, y'all. That there's not much that she would do differently from what President Biden did. That was her opportunity there. At the Democratic National Convention, of which I was a delegate, she did not, they did not allow a Palestinian family or an Arab American, elected or person get up there and give a speech. I think that would have went a long way. So for her now to play Monday morning quarterback and kind of rewrite history is wild to me, and that's my catchphrase for anything I really want to curse about. It's just wild to me that she would say those things. Now, I am told by people who did get a chance to talk to the vice president back then that her views were different. So I want to put that out there into the two-way universe. But the fact that she did not use her incredible imprimatur, her incredible platform, especially when she was running, to draw some separation is quite disappointing. And for her now to turn around and say, oh, I said so forcefully. When behind closed doors, that matters nothing.
So Dan, let me paint a picture for you. Kamala Harris is about to be on The View during the 107 days of the campaign. And she's on The View, and she gets the question, what would you have done differently from Joe Biden? And we're told she privately harbors this desire to break from the Biden administration on Israel, a break that would clearly be to her electoral benefit, given the pivotal nature of the state of Michigan, which has the largest Arab American population in the country. I grew up in Michigan. There are areas where there was deep dissatisfaction with the administration on that front. And she says, and I'm basically quoting, "Nothing comes to mind." What was going on there? What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, I think, this book tour has just been so remarkable because she had the idea to write the book. She wrote the book, and then they selectively leaked excerpts to build interest in the book. At every stage, it has been a disaster. And one of the comments that she made was, I didn't realize after The View how much people wanted me to basically break from Joe Biden, like how big of a deal that was. That is a lie. That is absurd. She knew that was the number one issue. Their polling, their focus groups, their strategy sessions. How do we do this? She made the decision, by all accounts, that she was going to remain loyal to him. Now, we can say that was a dumb decision, but what she's doing on this book tour is walking away from all of her history, both in the written word in the book and prior to this, and acting shocked. She's kind of trying to downplay stuff. She's trying to pivot. It's my understanding from people around her, she's shocked at the reaction to her book. She's been hurt. She's trying to change the narrative. Like, you wrote this book. You made the decision to do this as part of your comeback. It just speaks to what a terrible political candidate she is. I'm sorry. It just does.
Yeah.
You don't
She
have to
seems
be sorry
delusional.
for that, Dan.
She seems like she lives in a different reality sometimes.
And the only,
it's
I don't
stunning.
even have, it's not contempt necessarily that I have for her. I do have a certain, it's wrong to have contempt for people. She was done, I have pity for her to the extent she was done so dirty by Biden's inner circle and their staffers and the campaign apparatus that she inherited that did not want to ever say anything bad about Biden and still don't, and are the ones who are kind of most vocally upset with her which is like, well, you people should really go into irrelevancy. But then what you're left with is.
But then why did she run? Like,
Right.
she wanted to be the nominee. She cleared the field. She put those elbows out that first hour, made calls, as the book says. What's the primary process? You're looking at it right now. Are you with me or are you not with me?
I'm
right?
the primary process now.
Right. And so, so for her to then say, well, I didn't have enough time and people were against me, then you should not have done this. And I'll just say, because I have a lot of people, a lot of friends who worked for her on her AG race, her Senate race, and her first presidential race. Every one of them says the same thing. She blames everybody for everything and she would call people at 1 o'clock in the morning to vent about a campaign decision. This was even on her AG race. Really? Not that that person had any responsibility for the area or the issue that she was complaining. She wanted to choose somebody out. She wanted to vent so that when everyone woke up the next morning, hey, the candidate called, they're really upset about this. She never took accountability or responsibility for anything. It's always been her MO.
There was a story, and there was a story, Dan, early in the administration. It might have been Politico, maybe Axios, one of those two, DC scuttlebutt stories or outlets. But the story was about Kamala's staff exodus. And one of the things that was cited specifically was that she would go into meetings without having read the briefing material. She wasn't prepared. And then inevitably, when the meeting went bad or she looked like an idiot, she would come out and start screaming at her staff for not properly preparing her. And they're like, how do you prep someone who doesn't read the prep materials that you give them? It's just impossible.
Well, that sounds like President Trump, Amber. But let me go on and stay on the vice president. Listen, she did not have to run, right? And she did not have to keep Biden's staff. So for her to act helpless, you are the vice president of the United States of America. For God's sakes, you guys did not have a real primary. And you can go back and check the record, colleagues, and two-way family. That is the biggest mistake that the Democratic Party did to clear the field, to keep propping up President Biden. And there was only one actively elected member of Congress who had the guts and the courage to run, and that's the congressman from Minnesota.
Dean Phillips.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to just add, though, if we look forward, every Democrat thinking of running for president or Senate leader or whatever, those protests are going to keep happening. Like the idea that you cannot take a stand, that you can think that you can kind of like move the Gaza-Israel issue off to the side, it is going to be front and center. And you better come up with a way to, have a conversation and be direct with the electorate, because otherwise, wait till town halls start in Iowa or wherever, South Carolina, you're going to see more protesters.
And most Democrats are not happy about what is going on in Gaza. They're not happy about the ethnic cleansing. In some
most Republicans aren't happy with it. I mean, conservative base. Yeah,
that too, Rob. So they are going to have to answer to that. And I think it's just disqualifying if Democrats think they're going to be able to walk away from this.
I think it's becoming another issue of just elites in general being out of touch with where public sentiment is. On the right, especially among young people, there is a massive age gap on this issue, to be clear, that older conservatives are much more supportive of not just Israel, but Israel's government. Younger conservatives are not. And it's verging into like 80-20 territory. Again, not that Israel should not exist or that we should be anti-Israel, but that what is the U.S.'s role in not even just letting them buy weapons, but in funding the conflict.
That's right.
This is an issue. It seems like both political parties could benefit from moving a little bit in that direction. And I know Amber agrees. I'm in substituting Emma Jo for Amber. And the one issue where there's some serious difference probably between the two of you is this one.
That's probably the only one. But no, I totally agree. The young right is very concerned about this. And to his credit, Vivek Ramaswamy called this out during the primary process, and he took a lot of heat for it. People accused him of being anti-Semitic and thought he was crazy. And he was actually tapping into something that was a really legitimate undercurrent in the Republican Party. And a big reason for the split is that older Republicans tend to be more evangelical. So they have actually religious interest in Israel, not just a political interest. Younger Republicans are either like very conservative Catholics or like not religious, at least just from my own personal experience. And I think some of the statistics bear that out.
And one of there's so many reasons. One of the many reasons I think the loss of Charlie Kirk is so sad is that I thought he was navigating this issue very well.
He was.
Debate on it. He had, Josh Hammer, the most pro-Israel person on the right, debate Dave Smith, an intensely critical person, and it was an uncomfortable debate, but he had the debate. And I trust the organization under its next leadership, but I worry there's going to be a vacuum on the right. And for all I know, someone who is way more extreme in either direction who will not navigate this issue well could emerge.
Amber, do you think J.D. Vance is going to struggle with this issue a little bit as he looks out at 2028 and wants to keep young voters energized and or do you think as long as Trump's there, he still has kind of clarity of lockstep with Israel, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, on everything else, JD Vance has been so America first oriented, but the Israel thing is going to be difficult because the Trump administration policy wise has not differed from the Biden administration. Like, yes, his administration has leaked to the media that he's frustrated with Netanyahu, or he of course, publicly while standing next to the man did say that children were in fact starving in Gaza, which I guess is some progress. But it's going to be a similar issue to the one that Kamala had, which is you're going to have to actually outline how the policy is going to change.
Right. When it's actually your person, you have to own it or say you want it to be different. We got to leave it there. We're so thankful to our community members who joined us for this episode of the group chat. Amber, thanks so much for filling.
Yeah, well done, Amber.
It's great talking with you. Remember, our mantra is peace, love, understanding, and we will be back here next week, Thursday at 4 p.m., and we really hope to see you to continue the conversation. Thanks so much.